And you think you're getting a great deal on a new car.
Don't lease. It's a ripoff.
You may end up paying twice the price.
Mr. Pico came here to buy an automobile, and he was talked into a lease.
The Crusaders go undercover to show you why you should look before you lease. But next, it's a car dealer's secret weapon, and it's aimed straight at you.
I felt that I was violated.
What should happen to car dealers who trick people into signing a lease?
They should be fined.
They should be banned.
They should kill it.
The Crusaders, making a difference for you.
An estimated 30% of new cars on the road these days are leased. Now, you may think leasing is the answer to your automotive dreams, but it could be the beginning of a financial nightmare. Our undercover investigation reveals leasing ripoffs that could cost you twice the sticker price. Our crusade shows you how to look before you lease. Deputy Sheriff Jim Croupe picked the perfect spot to raise his family, a small ranch in California's Central Valley. Far from the maddening crowd, his kids take a ride on a docile old pony. But Jim Croupe prefers transportation of the four-wheel kind. 3 years ago, Jim needed a new truck. He went to a Ford dealer wanting to buy a vehicle, but the salesman told him leasing would be cheaper than buying.
So I bought. Hook, line, and sinker.
What Jim bought into was a 5-year lease. 3 years later, with his family growing, Jim's leased pickup was getting cramped.
So I started looking at possibly terminating the lease and turning the vehicle in for something that we could use that could handle 6 passengers.
But when Jim went back to the dealership where he leased the truck, he got a rude awakening. They said he'd have to pay a $2,500 penalty for ending the lease early. Jim started adding up the numbers and found out he'd been had in a number of ways. In the lawsuit Jim recently filed against the dealer, these were some of his claims. Jim says the dealer secretly jacked up the price of the truck about $6,000. He also says his trade-in wasn't counted toward the lease, and the lawsuit contends the dealer kept the factory rebate Jim was promised. The owner of the dealership Jim is suing refused our request for an interview, but they are denying the allegations in the lawsuit.
What does this say about some dealerships and some leasing agencies if they have the audacity to try and rip off a law enforcement official?
They'll do it to anybody. They'll do it to anybody. They don't care. They don't have any scruples, evidently.
When Jim Croupe leased his truck, he didn't know what he was getting into, and there's a reason. Unlike a sale, the federal disclosure law that governs leasing doesn't require the car dealer to tell the customer everything. Auto expert Ashley Knapp.
Most leases are sold based on ignorance. The person going after the lease has in their mind the dream of an easy rental car. This image is constantly pushed in the media all the time. What they don't realize is they're signing up for something that is far more sophisticated than a rental or a loan and creates tremendous financial obligation on their part. And to many of us, it creates a tremendous burden. And people don't see this going in.
We wanted to find out for ourselves and everybody else how not to become a lease victim. So we went with an undercover camera to a new car dealer in Southern California. Our buyer was a local banker with good credit.
We fill out a credit app and then we'll talk price and all that.
After the test drive, we went inside to talk turkey, and the first salesman laid out 2 deals.
24-month program versus a 5-year program.
The 5-year program was a purchase, but unlike a bank loan, it's the kind of purchase where you pay mostly interest the first 24 months. That's a bad deal if you want to trade the car in 2 years. Using that unattractive loan, the salesman steered our buyer toward the lease.
At the end of 2 years, you have a guaranteed future minimum value. It's a closed-end lease. Okay.
But our savvy banker wanted to know what the lease was going to cost him.
And if I do this, isn't there like a rate involved in that?
It's a money factor. It's like a rental fee.
Is it like a percentage or what? What's the percentage on that?
Like 3 to 6%, 9, 8%. Real low.
3, 6, 9, 8. Which is it? Totally confused, our banker went ahead and filled out a credit application. Soon, a second salesman took over. This is the guy who's evidently here to close the deal. He made the lease sound even better. like there was money to be made.
Is that when you come back in 2 years and you say, hey, Stacy, I want to get something different, whether it's Explorer, whatever it is, okay? Ford's going to guarantee to you that you're going to get $14,768.
For 2 hours, our banker tried over and over again to get the salesman to answer one question, a question they constantly avoided. What is this truck going to cost me at the end of the deal?
I mean, from what you've told me, it's a good deal.
Okay.
And it makes this one look like such a bad deal. So I'm trying to figure out what it's costing me to do this deal.
I'll be glad to tell you.
But in fact, our banker was never told, never given a rate of interest that made any sense. The salesman made a final attempt to close the deal.
I'll tell you what I'll do for you to make it easy, because I do want your business, okay? If you go with the plan and you decide, okay, after going home and analyzing and crunching it in your computer and doing all the things you need to do, because you're not going to figure this out in 5 minutes. You want to go back to a purchase, I'll do that for you.
Later that night, we showed our undercover video to consumer attorney Aurora Harris.
What I saw was the customer quickly and smoothly switch to a lease. I saw a constant apples and orange comparison of leases versus purchases. There was a 2-year lease compared to a 5-year purchase. The most dangerous thing that I saw was the suggestion that the consumer go ahead and sign the contract without understanding it, and that if he later chose to purchase, that the dealership would somehow go along with this.
Like Deputy Sheriff Jim Croupe with his leased pickup truck, the man driving in this car felt ripped off by a clever car salesman. After hearing his story, we took an angry Victor Piku of Seattle, Washington, back to the dealership that he said tricked him into accepting a lease.
I did not hear the word lease agreement until I was halfway through signing the papers with the sales manager.
Victor said by that time he was just too tired to fight the pushy sales manager, so he went ahead and signed. But going over the paperwork later, Victor said the numbers didn't make sense. The car he traded hadn't reduced the cost of the lease.
In a way, they stole my car. They actually took they got my 88 Taurus, which they can resell, but really didn't give me anything for it.
Armed with the knowledge from our undercover investigation, we were ready to take on the challenge to help Victor get a fair deal.
With all due respect to the agreement that you two put forth, Mr. Pico came here to purchase an automobile, and he was talked into a lease unbeknownst to him. And we just like to sit down and have a conversation with a representative of this organization to find out.
Well, that's not a problem.
Why
It was between Mr. Pico and myself.
Okay. Then will you allow Mr. Pico and his attorney to sit down and have a conversation to see if you can work this out, and we'll turn our camera off?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Fine. We'll shut the camera off right now, and we'll see if we can work this out.
The camera was closed out, but we weren't, and continued to press on in a closed-door meeting. After 45 minutes of haggling, we finally achieved the solution we had hoped for. The dealer agreed to tear up the lease and let Mr. Piku buy the Camry at terms that were satisfactory to Victor. We found a solution for Victor, but the problem is bigger than one man's deal. Washington State Assistant Attorney General Doug Walsh laid it out in terms of dollars and cents.
I would say consumers are losing millions and millions of dollars every day in the economy because they don't understand lease transactions.
While Jim Croupe presses ahead with his legal battle, he says he's learned a valuable lesson.
One, don't do it.
Don't lease.
Don't lease. I wouldn't do it. It's a ripoff.
Washington and Florida are about to publish consumer handbooks on leasing. As part of our solution, the Crusaders will be distributing those handbooks to every attorney general in the country. We're also working with Washington State and the AAA to arrange the drafting and distribution of the National Consumer Leasing Handbook. And Carla, I will tell you, after this experience, it is needed.
Important information. Thank you very much, Howard. The Crusaders will return in just a moment. Please stay with us.